Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, is back in the news, specifically about the guilty plea he agreed to with the feds. And hang on for this one. The Wall Street Journal obtained audio of a phone call, as one does, between Cohen and actor Tom Arnold, an outspoken critic of the president, recorded March 25th of this year. The Journal reports Cohen was not aware he was being recorded. Cohen is heard saying he's innocent of tax evasion and of understanding his debt in an application for a home equity line of credit.
I lost my business. I lost, everything, my insurance, my bank accounts, all for what? All for what? Because Trump, had an affair with a porn star? That's really what this is about. Yep. There's no tax evasion. And the HELOC, I have an 18% loan to value on my home.
Right.
How could there be a HELOC issue?
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's absolutely right.
It's a lie.
I said understating the value of his home. The White House has denied allegations that Trump has had an affair. We should point that out. The Journal also reports, quote, Cohen said he had pleaded guilty to the charges in August because they had me on campaign finance and prosecutors were targeting his wife. As part of our series, Uncovered, we're diving deep into portions of the Mueller report which have not received a whole lot of news coverage. And we're focusing tonight on Cohen. After the FBI searched his home and office a year ago, according to Mueller, after the searches, Trump called Cohen and told him to hang in there and stay strong. Cohen said he also heard from individuals who were in touch with the president. The report reads this way, quote, Cohen recalled that Redacted, a friend of the president's, reached out to say he was with the boss in Mar-a-Lago and the president had said he loves you and not to worry. Cohen recalled that Redacted for the Trump Organization told him the boss loves you. And Cohen said that Redacted, a friend of the president's, told him everyone knows the boss has your back. With that, we bring in Emily Jane Fox, national correspondent for Vanity Fair, also happens to be the author of Born Trump, Inside America's First Family. Emily Jane Fox, what have we learned here other than, number one, if Scorsese comes to you and says, no, I have better dialogue than the real thing, tell him he's crazy. And number two, if Tom Arnold calls you, just assume that anything you say could end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
This story to me really felt like Trump administration Mad Libs gone awry. It just had every little piece of the Trump story that we've watched played out over the last 3 years. What I think was important today was, first of all, in this orbit, you never know who's recording their phone calls, and odds are someone is. I spoke to Tom Arnold earlier today, and he said basically he did this to try and help Cohen. He thought that this would be helpful to have his own words out there and his truth in his own words, because Cohen has been, other than his public testimony in front of Congress, relatively silent, especially about the charges against him. And
Tom Arnold is the arbiter of what should be made public or not?
That's what he chose to do with this conversation. But he made clear that he believed he was doing this without Cohen's knowledge of the recording. And from all of my reporting on this, Cohen did not know that he was being recorded, and many of the things that he said were actually in the sentencing memo that his former attorney, Guy Petrillo, had filed in December of last year. And so that he was not going back on his guilty plea. These were arguments that he had made in that initial sentencing memo. They just happened to not get a tremendous amount of attention at the time.
In covering Michael Cohen, you have discussed on this broadcast his fear for his family members. I believe his wife was the bookkeeper of the small law firm. We've also seen Michael Cohen's family publicly threatened over social media, so he had grounds for that fear.
Sure, and I think that was actually one of the most interesting parts of the Mueller report for me, as someone who was looking very closely at the Cohen portion of it. What Robert Mueller and the special counsel's office laid out was the obstruction of justice or alleged obstruction of justice that was happening in plain sight. So as you read earlier, the president was sending these messages through friends to him to stay strong, but publicly he was calling Cohen a rat and saying that his members of his families should be investigated and looked into. And so those pieces of the Mueller report were particularly interesting to me because Mueller gave credence to Cohen's fear and said, we understand why this could look like potential witness tampering or potential obstruction of justice. It was just happening in plain sight.
Is it fair to say, and this calls, I guess, for a judgment on his state of mind, that Michael Cohen, as he prepares 12 days from now to enter the federal prison system, expected to be viewed as a more heroic figure than he is viewed as today?
I don't know what he expected. I think this is someone who has spent, since he pleaded guilty, or since the summer, has spent a tremendous amount of time with investigators, both in the special counsel's office, in the Southern District of New York, in the New York Attorney General's office, and in Congress, cooperating with investigators in a number of different investigations. His testimony has led to investigations of many others, including the Trump Organization, members of the Trump family. His testimony led to, I think, upwards of 80 people being asked for documents for different congressional committees. So I think he believed that his cooperation would be considered. But as you said, in 12 days, he is due to report, and the Southern District of New York has not made a move to limit his sentence at all.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.